So, Marcus, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us for this little Q&A that we're going to be doing to find out a bit more about you and your journey with Axial Spa, and also the challenge that you'll be taking on to raise funds for NASS. Um, so, Marcus will be taking on a 200-mile cycling challenge around Norfolk in September with a team of other cyclists. And he's hoping to raise £2,000 for NASS by taking on this challenge. And all the money that he will be raising will be helping to keep our information and support services going to continue our support for people with Axial Spa at NASS. So, Marcus, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Just first off, really, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your journey to diagnosis with Axial Spa.
But I mean, myself, Marcus, obviously. But the journey started. I was working out the other day. It is 25 or 26 years, probably 25. Where probably before that, I remember going to a doctor and complaining about pains going down my legs and lower, what I now know as the lumbar spine, and pains in that area. So the doctor originally diagnosed me as having sciatica. I think it's probably about 6 months to a year's time after that. I said, look, whatever you're prescribing me is not working. So they got me in some more tests, x-rays. And I think probably about three or 4 months later, they diagnosed me with ankylosing spondylitis. Um, and then I guess the real journey started from them because I started reading up in it and understanding it a lot more. A lot of lifestyle changes had to take place. But I think first of all, going to Reading Hospital and being treated a little bit like a guinea pig. Because I went in, there was some young students that were actually learning about ankylosing spondylitis at the time. So I stayed there for the full day and we did lots of different tests and I was understanding it more because it was being described to the students, which was really, really handy. And then after that, I spent a week in Reading Hospital. I think it was a week anyway, where I did some intensive physiotherapy, and obviously through the physiotherapist, I understood it a little bit more as well. I think at the time, what didn't help, I used to smoke a lot because I used to run a pub, and I later found out that well, when I was in hospital, I found out yeah, you shouldn't really be smoking because of obviously the health that is called the bad things that it causes, but it actually affects your AS as well. So I didn't stop smoking, unfortunately. Um, but what I did find out was that obviously exercise, which I didn't do any of, I was happy to because I ran a pub, I drank and I smoked. I was still quite young, still having fun. Um, so then came the time and realization, I think more so once I left that pub job, I was still getting the pains because I wasn't necessarily taking it as seriously as I probably should be. I was still wasn't really doing the exercise. I probably went and played football, which I didn't do before, once a week. That was the only exercise I was doing. So when I came to London, I started to do a lot more exercise. I was still doing the football and I used to cycle to work and I'd probably go to the gym once a week or something like that. But that really helped. But I didn't stop the smoking. Probably 2 years after that, stopped smoking, stopped drinking as much. And then I started to see the benefits of that. Um, but it took some time. I think it was probably a period of about a year or 2 years after being diagnosed that I was still struggling to get out of a chair because it was so painful. So if I'd been sat down for a very long period of time, everything was just seizing up. Um, and it was horrendous at the time. I remember it being horrendous, and I said, look, I really need to do something about this. Taking the drugs that were being prescribed at the time, it was helping, but once they wore off, that then obviously didn't then help. Um, so I guess after a period of time, I really upped the game with the exercise, and I would imagine probably once we get to about 2010, so 10 years after diagnosis, I started to get into running. I was going to the gym about 2 or 3 times a week before that, but I joined a company and they gave me a marathon place for London Marathon, which I ended up doing 2 or 3 times. But what I found with doing a marathon was it was really difficult. And the pains because of the AS and the fatigue that you would get, not like the day after, but the fatigue actually whilst you're running. It was quite an eye opener, and I think probably after that I joined a running club, and I then started to learn a lot more about the physical exercise and how ankylosing spondylitis actually responds to exercise. Because I was probably running 5 days a week rather than it being once or twice, and incorporating a lot more stretching and exercises that we went through when we were doing the intensive physiotherapy. And I think probably by 2010, I started to manage it, um, probably in the way that the physiotherapist wanted me to do 10 years beforehand. Um, so yeah, it's a real learning curve to get to that point where I wasn't relying on the drugs that was being prescribed. I probably have to go to the doctors once or maybe twice a year to get the prescription. And slowly I weaned off those. Um, Apart from right now, I'm back on them. But that's because I'm doing more cycling than the running side of things. But I'm quite well known, notorious for doing a challenge every year. Because one of the things that I decided probably back in 2010 doing the marathons was that I would never let this ankylosing spondylitis define me anymore and what I'm able to do. And from that, and then being able to run 5 times a week, joining the club where they do lots of different events, I was able to do more things that I didn't think I'd be able to do. So I started taking part in races. We then started going to a thing called Vets League where I do lots of jumping, javelin, shot put, and all those kind of things, and racing. And I guess over time, I started to become more confident in my ability to be able to actually run. One thing that didn't change was the fatigue, and it was just how you manage that fatigue. Um, and I suppose using lots of proteins and things like that and eating differently helps, but not too much. But yeah, so I do challenges. I mean, 2 or 3 years ago, I did a half marathon every day for the whole of May, which we did for a different charity. I've done an ultra marathon 2 years ago, which I never thought I'd be able to do, especially after it was 10 years since I did a marathon. I said after my last marathon, I would never run again because it was just far too painful. But with the help of a chap called Nick, a very good friend of mine, who's a good running coach, he helped me for 3 or 4 months, probably a bit longer than that actually. So like with proper training. And I think the proper training with everything that I knew about ankylosing spondylitis, and he started to read up and learn about it as well. We managed to get through the ultra marathon relatively easy. Where apart from the last 5 kilometers, where I mean, if you imagine you do long distance running, it does hurt. But it didn't hurt anywhere near what it did when I did those first 3 marathons. I later did another marathon, which didn't go so well. But I think in terms of the challenges that I do, that's the pinnacle of being able to say, I've done it, I've beat my AS. Um, I can go around and inspire other people that suffer from similar diseases as this.
Of course. And the story arc you told there is a real change. You used to own a pub, and with also that with that comes more drinking, more smoking, working, long unsociable hours. Um, and now what you're describing is that, exercise is a very full and major part of your life.
Mhm.
I don't have AS myself, so I don't have that personal experience of what that transformation feels like. I guess what the question I'd ask to you is, how have you found that change, and are there any kind of bits of advice that you give to anyone who's looking to do a little, even just a little bit more exercise to maybe help with their AS?
Um, yeah, I guess with the change, like I say, it gives you confidence in being able to do things rather than just being stuck in a chair, which is what I found myself in. Um, if you're put in a position where you feel like you can't move because it's going to hurt too much, it's about finding a way of going about changing that. And I guess like my coach used to say to me is that you need to have a why. And the why was to get better and actually beat the AS as much as possible. And I just got this mindset where I said, look, I'm going to do this. I'm fed up of being in pain all the time. Yes, I'll go and get drugs to start off with, but it's going to give me the ability to be able to do things that I really want to do. I wanted to do exercise, but I guess in the mindset at the time was, the pain was too much. It was preventing me from doing it, and I I guess as well it's about enjoying it as well at the same time. Um, I became competitive with myself, not necessarily with other people, though I am competitive with other people. Um, so I just found this mindset of going around doing personal bests all the time. And with that came the fitness. So now I'm one of the faster runners in my club, luckily. Um, but there are some that are a lot faster, and I wish I could run that fast, but I know I'd never be able to run that fast, and I know I won't be able to do the amount of running that I do. But I'm just happy to be able to do something. And I guess if I was giving advice to anybody that is in a similar position to what I was, is to have the why. If you really want to get out of a cycle of being in pain, is to actually try something that whether it's going for a walk every day of the week for half an hour or go up to an hour, or seeing how fast you can walk if it's quicker than the last time that you did it. And those are the kind of things that I did.
And you talked about the pain that you were in and obviously still do experience. So, can you tell us a little bit more about, some of the specific symptoms that do affect you or did affect you?
Yeah. I mean, currently one of the things that I have, and I've had for a very long time, is the pains that go down the back of the legs to the calves. So that tends to happen more so after I've done a long run or a very fast run, um, or specifically when I'm sat down for a long period of time. Um, I probably drive to Cornwall once or twice a year, Newcastle once or twice a year. So talking like 5 or 6 hour drives, and probably within 30 minutes of being sat down in the car, you've got another 4.5 hours of excruciating pain. And the drugs that you're given, whether it's I can't remember what I take, but they don't work in circumstances like that. It feels like you just got a trapped nerve in the back of your leg, and it just goes down, and it's just very, very uncomfortable. But luckily driving gives me focus about trying in my head to say it doesn't hurt, or just keep fidgeting around. So that's one of the symptoms. I guess the other few things I get is because the amount of running that I do is fatigue. Um, my wife would tell me quite often, "Why are you so tired? Why are you yawning all the time?" Um, that's one of the part and parcel of what comes with AS, I think, for some people, not obviously all of them. But it takes me a longer time to recover than a normal person that doesn't have that. So, um, after a marathon, I'll be out probably for a week. I wouldn't be able to do anything. I'm a good to walk afterwards, but yeah, the body kind of reacts quite nastily to it.
Of course, of course. And I think that leads quite nicely onto the challenge that you've chosen to take it on because you mentioned driving. You're obviously in a seated position for a long time, and on this particular challenge, I mentioned at the beginning you'll be cycling 200 miles around Norfolk over 2 days. So
Yeah.
you've got the double whammy of that seated position, but you've
Yeah.
also know that you've got to get the next day to do the same thing. So I guess, can you tell us a little bit more about the challenge itself, why you've chosen this particular challenge, and what challenges you foresee that you'll experience, and what do you think you'll be able to do to overcome those?
Yeah. So the reason for the challenge is, I suppose there's quite a few things. I mean, the backdrop of why Norfolk. Norfolk, we as a running club have for many, many years taken part in a thing called the Round Norfolk Relay, which is a running event where I'll say that I think something like 15 or 20 runners will run over a 24-hour period, and they start at King's Lynn and they go all the way around Norfolk and then back up in King's Lynn. Our route taking a slightly different route. We're actually starting in Bury of St Edmunds, which I know isn't in Cambridge. Sorry, in Norfolk. So we're doing the same route, but starting off and finishing in a different place. Okay, so we're going clockwise, exactly the same way. And what we hope to do whilst we're doing the cycle is to come up with the runners and be able to support them at the same time, but not running. Cycling it over 2 days. So doing 100 miles the first day, and in Sheringham, and then from Sheringham we come back into Bury St Edmunds. So I think the history and the fact that we knew the route was quite important, and I think there's 2 or 3 other people that would be joining that have done that run as well, which is quite handy. Um, the reason why it's more of a challenge, I guess it really boils back down to do all those different challenges for charity, and I hadn't done a cycle challenge. Um, I've done 100 miles. I've done the Ride London 100 before. Okay. But I think the real challenge is that second day. Um, and as well at the moment, because I'm going through running season. So I'm not able to do as much cycling as I probably should be to actually get. So I think from that point of view, it's going to be really difficult the second day. Probably more so towards the end, when we do start to feel tired, but we've got lots of nutritional advice, and we've spoken to a few people about what we should be doing about fueling. So hopefully that will help us massively. But yeah, I think the challenge was to do 200 or do a big target that wasn't running. Because like I say, everything I've probably done over the last 10 years has always been running, um, or doing something crazy like the half marathons every day, which was utter madness. Um, but I wanted to do something as a group as well, because I've never done anything as a group. So I love organizing things because I'm like a race director for a couple of races, and I do loads of stuff for my running club. But I hadn't done anything with cycling as a group, and I just fancied doing something a little bit different. And I think as well, when you're raising money continuously, one, you have to do something that's bigger than what you've done before. And I think this time it needs to be something that's different to what I've done before. Um, and as well, to do something for the charity as well, because I haven't done anything for you guys in the past. And I thought, do you know what? It's about time I did something, and try and raise some people that are or have been or are currently as unfortunate as I was when I first started or when I was first diagnosed, because I know it's very difficult. And if people don't get the opportunity to get some really sound advice and be put through physiotherapy and to understand it, then it is really difficult.
And absolutely, and all the funds that you'll be raising will be helping with, keeping our information and support services and going and providing that really key information support that you've just mentioned. And what kind of, you mentioned that second day, so and you've got a team around you. It won't just be you. Can you give us an idea of kind of what time are you waking up? What kind of foods you're going to be eating, drink, stops, rests? How is it all going to work, and how do you think that's going to affect you, particularly on the second day with your AS?
Yeah, well, I think we'll be starting around 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. We expect to be cycling probably about 9 to 10 hours of that, maybe slightly less, depending on uh, myself and then the other cyclists, and whether we come up with any punctures or any other things that break down as well. People just decide, okay, we need to have a bit of a break now. There will be breaks. I think we're planning on doing a break every 3 hours or something like that, but with a lunch break that would be a little bit longer. So let's say 40 minutes, and then the short breaks 10 to 15 minutes. We obviously need to do things like go to the toilets and stuff like that. So there will be stops along the way. I think in terms of nutrition, we will probably do a good breakfast when we start, because we're going to stay over the night before. So we'll make sure I have a breakfast laid up if we can get the owners of the property to actually come out nice and early to lay something out for us so we can just help ourselves. Um, and then we'll be doing rehydration all the way through. So we obviously have our water bottles on the bikes. So we've got rehydration tablets. There'll be all sorts of different fuels. So I use some either gums or gels for the carbohydrates to give us the energy. And we obviously need the magnesium and salts for the rehydration. And there'll be protein bars as well. So when we do our lunches, there'll be protein through there. So we need that for recovery during that period, and stop ourselves from seizing up. So hopefully we'll get back to the bases that we have 6 o'clock. That's what I'm hoping for anyway. And then we'll have a nice big dinner. Again, another breakfast in the morning. And then on that second day is probably the toughest one, as we've said. Um, Not just fatigue. One thing I didn't mention, I will get pains at the top of my spine, between the shoulder blades, because of the way we're sat. So I would imagine that there'll be some form of massaging required at some point, which I haven't actually thought of. I just suddenly thought of it, and that might be quite good.
And yeah, that sounds so challenging, especially with that second day. And during our chat, it's really clear that you've gone on a really kind of and a long journey with AS and introduced big changes into your lifestyle. If you were to kind of summarize kind of that experience and provide any advice, is there anything that springs to mind that you would say to anyone who was in your position all those years ago when you started out with your when you started out before your diagnosis and when you were diagnosed?
Yeah. Yeah, it's difficult to, I mean, as you very well know, that AS is hard to diagnose. There's a lot of people that get misdiagnosed with things like sciatica, which is how I started. And it took a little while. I've met a few people recently that have been diagnosed. I said, look, go back to your doctor and just double check it's not this because your symptoms sound similar to what I had. And they've gone back and luckily they haven't and they've done some tests. So I think it's worth checking if you do get diagnosed with things like sciatica to actually go back to the doctor and say, look, is it possibly this? Is there any way that we can actually get it checked out? Um, because it took a while to get the diagnosis right. And I think if I had well, it's quite interesting because I didn't take it seriously to begin with. And being younger, you're a bit more naive, I guess, and you think you can just carry on and you're unbeatable, no matter what. And I think if I took it more seriously when I was first diagnosed, I'd probably be in a better position a lot quicker than what I did get. So I think if there's any advice is to, if you get diagnosed with it, is to really take it seriously before it becomes a lot worse. I know there are people that are in different positions because they're diagnosed so much further down the line that it's probably too difficult to do something about it. So I'm not saying that my way of dealing with this is a good way or the best way, because people are suffering from ankylosing spondylitis in very different ways. But if you're fortunate enough, like myself, being young and being able to do something about it and probably not suffering so long, take it more seriously, you can actually go around and you obviously can't do anything but stop it from getting worse. And I think had I done that a lot earlier, I think I'd be probably in a better position than I am now, and not having to do all these silly challenges. They're not silly, they're worthwhile because I'm challenging myself still and I'm actually doing some good from doing something that I love. But if you looked at me 25 years ago, I'm a different figure completely to what I used to be. Um, and I guess I'm a lot more motivated and happier to do things like this, like running. I wouldn't be doing that 25 years ago at all.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So
Well,
get your
Marcus,
running shoes on.
thank
I'll
you ever
stop
so
it now.
much. It's been such an inspiration to talk to you. And for all those who are watching, if you'd like to support Marcus, I'll make sure that there's a link to your fundraising page when we share this video. So please donate. Wish him good luck. We'll definitely be posting nearer the time as well in September when you're about to take on your challenge. So we look forward to catching up with you then. But otherwise, thank you ever so much, Marcus, for choosing to raise funds for NASS, for taking on this incredibly tough challenge for us. And we really can't wait to see how you get
Thank you.
on.
Thank you very much. And if anybody wants to come and join, there's an
Absolutely.
opportunity. Just tap me up and anybody that likes cycling, that's got AS, I'd love to have you to come along and help raise more money for the charity.
Absolutely, yeah. If you do have an interest in joining Marcus and his team and in the cycling challenge, either just pop us a message at fundraising@nass.co.uk or comment below, and we can put you in touch with Marcus. And we'll also make sure that Marcus's contact details are there
Honestly,
as well. Is
honestly,
there
it's
anyone in particular that they can contact you, Marcus?
yeah. I mean, to be honest, I mean, it's going to be brilliant fun. As you see, I probably smiled all the way through this. And that's the kind of people we hang around with, people that are really happy and motivated. So if you fancy a good 2 days away, having a good cycle, good chat with people, it's a good place to be.
Fantastic. Well, thank you ever so much, Marcus, and we
No
look
problem
forward
at all.
to see how you get on.
Thank you very much. I look forward to updating you once it's all done.